Welcome to the Luna's Bloom, a werewolf fated mate romance where fate is messy, the sparks are wild, and the full moon brings more than just fur and fangs. There's snark, steam, and a mate, bond neither of them asked for, but can't escape. Buckle up, pack. From haunted hearts to ancient curses, you'll find stories here that pull you in and don't let go. If you're into tales that twist the real and the unreal, you're in the right place. TM Nyxen Audiobooks, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive in. The smell of roasted garlic and wine hung heavy in the air, a fragrant invitation to indulgence as the maitre d' navigated the sisters through the crowded restaurant. The space buzzed with hushed conversations and the clinking of silverware, a symphony of affluent leisure. Marble floors, polished to a mirror sheen, gleamed under their heels, reflecting the warm glow of the chandeliers overhead. Soft instrumental music, a curated playlist of unobtrusive elegance, threaded through the room like background silk, adding another layer to the luxurious atmosphere. The place was a perfectly calibrated mix of intimate lighting and conspicuous money, exactly the kind of establishment where influencers, perched on velvet banquettes, whispered about limited menus, chefs' seasonal fancies, and the chef's legendary secret garden only accessible with a reservation made months in advance. The type of place where a blurry photo of your appetizer could garner hundreds of likes. Summer walked in like she owned not just a restaurant, but the entire city. Her perfectly tailored dress flowed behind her, her heels tapping a confident, rhythmic beat against the marble as she moved. A gold clutch, a beacon of subtle luxury, swung from her wrist. "Table 12, she chirped to the maitre d', flashing him a smile that had probably gotten them a better table than the one they booked. "Near the window, if it's free. You know, for lighting." She winked, the unspoken understanding of social media perfection hanging in the air. Mist followed, quieter, more reserved, letting her sister do what she did but run the show, charm the room, orchestrate their arrival like a perfectly staged scene. Her pale hair, a curtain of ethereal beauty, shimmered with a soft blush tint under the lights, catching attention as they passed. It was an intentional look. People looked. They always did. Mist was used to it, but tonight, she didn't feel like being looked at. She wanted anonymity, a quiet corner to celebrate. They were here to celebrate a momentous achievement. Luna Bloom's newest skincare range infused with a subtle blend of meticulously sourced herbs, and Luna Made Enchantment Shad sold out in less than 3 hours. 600 units gone, vanishing in a digital puff of perfume-scented smoke. Waitlists open immediately, stretching longer than a Parisian queue. Retailers were already scrambling for restock, their inboxes overflowing with frantic requests. It was a win, a huge one. They'd built the business from scratch, pouring their hearts and souls into every aspect. From humble beginnings, kitchen batch soap and handmade labels scrawled with their dreams, to luxury packaging that whispered elegance and a fully staffed HQ humming with innovation. And now, they were building an empire of softness and strength, on their terms, fueled by passion and a shared vision. Summer raised her glass of sparkling rosé as they sat down before they'd even opened the menus, the embossed cardstock reflecting the candlelight. "To us," she said, her smile wide and genuine, radiating pride and affection. "To glowing skin, global shipping, and girl packs ruling the world." Mist clinked her glass gently against Summer's, the delicate sound echoing in the brief lull of conversation. "And to the part where we didn't kill each other doing it." They laughed. That easy, familiar rhythm between them, the comfortable banter that only sisters can share, filling the table like warmth, a shield against the outside world. Across the restaurant, Elias lifted his wine glass, the ruby liquid catching the light as he swirled it absent-mindedly. He leaned back in his chair, the supple leather conforming to his broad shoulders, listening to his brother drone on about a property near the Southern Ridgepack land negotiations, water access rights, boring territory logistics that, frankly, made his head ache. He took a sip of the wine, the complex flavors doing little to dispel the tedium of the conversation. And then he looked up. His gaze caught something, or rather, someone, that stole the breath right out of his chest. Time seemed to slow. Everything else faded into a blurry backdrop. A woman, Seated near the window, bathed in soft gold lighting that seemed to cling to her like a halo. Her hair, a pale waterfall with a hint of pink that shimmered with every subtle movement. Her skin was luminous, seemingly lit from within, her posture relaxed, but commanding, a natural grace that spoke of effortless confidence. She wasn't even looking his way, she was laughing with another woman at her table, her face animated and beautiful, but he couldn't look away. He was captivated, ensnared by an invisible force. Elias froze, glass halfway to the table, his hand suddenly heavy. "What's wrong?" his brother Dax asked mid-sentence, his voice laced with mild annoyance at the interruption. Elias didn't answer right away. His wolf, usually a restless, impatient presence within him, had gone completely still, alert, utterly focused. He nodded subtly toward the window, his movements barely perceptible. "Who's that?" Dax followed his gaze, then let out a low whistle, his eyes widening in appreciation. "Damn. Now that's a woman." "No," Elias said under his breath, eyes narrowing slightly. His gaze locked on the woman across the room. "She's something else. Something indefinable. Something that resonated on a primal level." The scent hit him next, a wave of intoxicating aroma that washed over him, stealing his already compromised senses. Subtle, sweet, but wild. Something floral layered over storm wind and power, like a delicate blossom clinging to a windswept mountain. Not perfume, not just wolf. There was something ancient in it, something almost forgotten, a whisper of legends, something impossible. "Do you smell that?" he asked, already knowing the answer. The scent was as unique as her appearance, a signature that would be impossible to mistake. Dax shifted in his seat, sniffed the air, his brow furrowing. "Yeah, strong, female, not like anything I've picked up before. Exotic, expensive." Elias's heart thumped once, hard, a heavy beat that echoed in his ears. He'd grown up hearing the stories, passed down through generations like treasured heirlooms and whispered warnings. Whispers about a pink lunisome said it was a myth, a product of overactive imaginations fueled by moonlit nights and wishful thinking. Others swore she'd existed once, a century ago, touched by the moon herself, blessed with power beyond comprehension. But those were bedtime stories, fairy tales told to wide-eyed pups. Wolves weren't pink. Lunas weren't real. Not like that. And yet, here she was, laughing with her sister, completely unaware of the storm she'd just stirred across the room, the chaotic whirlwind of emotions she'd unleashed within him. Elias watched her, transfixed, as if she were a mirage that might vanish at any moment. Dax leaned in, his expression a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Elias didn't blink. No ghost ever looked like that. She turned slightly, tucking her hair behind one ear with a graceful gesture, and a small insignia was tattooed just below her ear, barely visible beneath the cascade of pink-tinged hair. A symbol etched into her skin, a mark that hinted at secrets and hidden depths. Her profile was striking, elegant, and sharp, with that hint of something untamed underneath, a wildness that simmered beneath the surface, the kind of beauty that didn't just walk into rooms. It arrived, announcing itself with an undeniable presence. Elias set down his wine glass, the crystal clinking softly against the marble tabletop, and leaned back, eyes fixed across the room, his focus unwavering. Dax followed his line of sight and let out a low whistle. "Who is that?" Elias didn't answer. He didn't have the words yet. Just a feeling, a primal instinct that screamed at him to protect, to possess, to understand. Just then, Marco, the restaurant's charming and discreet owner, strolled over to check in, a bottle of vintage champagne in one hand and that easy, disarming grin of his in place. "Evening, boys. Everything all right over here?" "Perfect, as always," Elias said, forcing a casual tone, taking a slow sip of his wine, trying to calm the chaotic energy swirling within him. "Hey, Markoto, you know the two women at that table?" He nodded subtly toward the far corner, careful not to be too obvious. Marco followed his gaze, squinted a second, then gave a knowing grin, a twinkle in his eye. "Ah, yeah, that's Mist and Summer, sisters." They run that high-end skincare boutique downtown Loon something, I think. My wife's obsessed. Spends half my paycheck there. He chuckled, shaking his head good-naturedly. Elias arched a brow, intrigued. Skincare? Fancy stuff. Smells like flowers and moonlight. All natural, handmade, the whole shebang. Marco chuckled again, shaking his head. They've got a bit of a cult following. Women are crazy for it. Elias's fingers drummed lightly against the stem of his glass, a nervous habit betraying the intensity of his thoughts. Think you could get me a business card? Marco tilted his head, his eyebrows raised in surprise. For you? No, Elias said smoothly, maintaining his composure. Tell them it's for your wife. She wants to give it to her mother. Keep it casual. Just a friendly gesture. Marco grinned, clearly amused by Elias's unusual interest. Subtle. I like it. Haven't seen you this smitten since, well, never. Just get the card, Elias said, his tone firm but still courteous, his eyes never leaving the woman across the room. Don't mention me. Marco gave him a mock salute, a mischievous glint in his eye. Consider it done, Alfa Romeo. He turned and made his way toward their table, all charm and practiced small talk, a master of subtle diplomacy. Dax leaned in, eyebrow raised, a silent question hanging in the air. You don't even know her. I will, Elias murmured, his voice low and resolute as the laughter from across the room, a melody both sweet and wild, wrapped around him like a scent he didn't want to forget. Dax raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism in his expression. Getting subtle in your old age? Elias didn't answer. He was still watching her, still trying to understand how something he didn't believe in could suddenly feel like it was his to protect, a primal instinct overriding all logic and reason. The Luna, the myth, the impossible woman, and he knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul, that his life had just irrevocably changed. The business card for Loon Bloom Naturals, an artisan skincare and botanical wellness company owned by Mist and Summer Solène, sat untouched on the table until the end of Elias's meal. It had been delivered mid-dinner by their friend with a cryptic comment about his wife and the skincare products. Elias tucked the card into his jacket without comment, ignoring the questions from his companion, Dax, about the woman with shimmering hair and the scent that lingered in Elias's memory. 3 days later, under the guise of keeping the wives happy, Elias visited the Loon Bloom storefront. The moment he stepped through the door, he was hit with the familiar scent of the sample he had tried, subtle but powerful, with floral and earthy notes that seemed to tug at something deep in his memory. He paused, taking in the jars and vials of facial oils and skincare products, before selecting a small vial of facial oil and inhaling deeply. As he uncapped the vial, the ancient note beneath the jasmine and rosehip was unmistakable. It was like crushed moonflower and something even rarer, something not supposed to grow anymore. The scent stirred something deep inside him, not just instinct, but memory. He handed the vial to Dax, who sniffed it and muttered in surprise. Just then, a bright voice chimed in from behind the counter, offering to help them find something for their wives. Elias quickly covered and purchased 2 sets of the limited batch infusion, feeling a sense of satisfaction as the assistant beamed and wrapped the purchases. As they left the store, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Loon Bloom Naturals than just skincare. He reached for his phone and called Dr. Layla Wren, a botanical specialist and research consultant, and asked her to come by and take a look at the products. As they drove away, Elias couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. There was something about Loon Bloom Naturals that he couldn't quite put his finger on, something that seemed both clever and potentially dangerous. Meanwhile, inside Loon Bloom, something pink and ancient bloomed quietly behind the shop's greenhouse wall, hidden from the prying eyes of customers and competitors alike. The scent still lingered in the car long after they left the store, a ghost of floral and earth. Warm floral notes, like sunshine on a summer meadow, intertwined with the grounding scent of ancient herbs, whispering of forgotten rituals and potent magic. Beneath it all, a hint of something wild, untamed, stirred within Elias. It made his wolf usually a patient and watchful presence, paced restlessly beneath his skin, a low growl rumbling in his subconscious. By the time they got back to the pack estate, the sky had bruised into deep blues and purples, the final vestiges of daylight bleeding away. Elias carefully carried both sets of Loom Bloom products inside, placing them on the long, cold granite island in the kitchen. Not because he was afraid of breaking them. The packaging felt surprisingly sturdy. It was more than that. Something in him respected what was inside, a primal acknowledgement of the raw power those innocuous jars contained. 15 minutes later, a sharp rap echoed through the large kitchen. Dr. Layla Wren knocked once, a perfunctory gesture, and let herself in. She was tall, almost intimidatingly so, and possessed a gaze that could dissect secrets with a single glance. Dressed in the kind of practical clothing that screamed, "I dig in dirt for fun and don't apologize for it." Her style was a world away from the polished image most pack members cultivated. Her dark, unruly curls were tied back in a haphazard bun, and a well-worn leather satchel clinked faintly with the telltale sounds of glass vials and metal tools, the tools of her trade. "Well," she said, dropping the bag on the counter with a thud, "you weren't exaggerating." I caught a whiff the second I stepped inside. Her nose wrinkled slightly, as if analyzing an incredibly complex equation. Elias slid one of the jars, a simple frosted glass container with an elegant silver lid, toward her. "Tell me what you find." She unscrewed the lid with practiced ease and inhaled slowly, deeply, her eyes closed. The silence in the kitchen thickened, broken only by the soft sounds of her breathing. Her brows pinched together, forming a deep V above her sharp nose. "That's not just clever scent blending," she murmured, reaching into her bag. "That's real." Out came an arsenal of tools, tweezers with needle, sharp points, a sterile scraper, several strips of clear film, and a tray of empty sample jars, each meticulously labeled. Layla worked with clinical precision, scooping a minute amount of the cream into a small glass dish. She held it to the light, examining its color and texture, then mixed it with a reagent that shimmered faintly, a kaleidoscope of iridescent colors swirling into existence where it touched the sample. Dax leaned on the counter, arms folded across his chest, his expression unreadable as he watched Layla's methodical examination. He was the ever-present shadow, the silent guardian, and his presence added another layer of tension to the already charged atmosphere. Elias just waited, his patience honed by years of leading the pack. He trusted Layla's expertise implicitly. If anyone could unravel the mystery of the Loom Bloom products, it was her. 5 minutes stretched into an eternity before Layla finally looked up, her face a mask of disbelief. "Tell me you're joking," she said softly, almost reverently. "Do you have any idea what this is? Some kind of rare flower?" Elias guessed, trying to keep his voice even. It felt old, familiar, ancient. His wolf, sensing his growing excitement, whined softly in his mind. She nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the swirling concoction in the dish. "It is. It's called Lunaris rosea." Elias frowned. "Never heard of it." "You wouldn't have," Layla replied, still mesmerized by the shifting hues in her tray. "Most haven't. It's known by another name, though. The Luna Bloom." Dax's posture straightened, the casual lean replaced by a rigid alertness. He understood the significance. Elias raised a brow, his interest piqued. "All right. So, what's the big deal? She's a Luna, right? Wouldn't it make sense that she and her sister could cultivate something like that?" He was deliberately downplaying the situation, trying to gauge their reactions. Layla turned to him, her eyes serious now, the initial awe replaced by a stark warning. "No, you don't understand, Elias. Not every Luna can summon this bloom. Most never will." She paused, letting the weight of it settle over them, the implications heavy and suffocating. "There's only one known type of Luna in all our history capable of growing it consistently. She's not just a Luna. She's something rarer, more mythical." She turned the overhead light so it glinted off the subtle shimmer of the powder forming in the tray, a faint, ethereal glow that seemed to pulse with its own inner life. They're called Selunari, she said almost in a whisper, the name itself carrying the weight of centuries. The pink lunas. Elias blinked, momentarily stunned. That's just a legend. A bedtime story told to pups. Layla shook her head, her expression unwavering. It was, until tonight. She pointed to the tray, her finger trembling slightly. This powder its ground, Luna Bloom, crushed petals to fine dust, distilled and embedded into the cream. Whoever made this didn't just grow the bloom. They understood it. They stabilized it, preserved it, weaponized it. Elias exhaled slowly through his nose, his mind racing to catch up with the implications. So you're saying the sisters are more than just smart entrepreneurs? Layla cut in, her voice laced with a mixture of awe and concern. They're Selunari line, possibly direct descendants. Do you understand what this means? Elias stared at the jar, its simple elegance belying the immense power it contained. It means they've been flying under the radar with one of the rarest natural resources our kind has ever seen, he said, his voice low and dangerous. And they found a way to bottle it, to sell it like common lotion. Layla nodded, her eyes wide. It's rarer than moonstone, rarer than a pure-blooded alpha. This bloom can heal, enhance strength, and calm rage. That's why it went extinct. Centuries ago, too many packs went to war for it, tearing the world apart in their desperate scramble for control. And now, Dax murmured, his gaze fixed on the jar, it's sitting on shelves in boutique packaging for $29.95. The irony is almost comical. Elias's mind was racing, piecing together the puzzle, the fragments clicking into place with unsettling clarity. Mist, her presence, that impossible beauty that seemed to defy the very laws of nature, the scent that had burrowed into his soul, the shift in the air, electric and undeniable whenever she walked into a room. It hadn't just been an attraction, a simple pull of fate. His wolf hadn't just been reacting to his mate, to the promise of companionship and shared strength. It had recognized power, old power, the kind of power that hadn't been seen in a generation, a force that could reshape the world. Clever, Elias murmured, a hint of admiration creeping into his voice. Very clever. What do you want to do? Dax asked, his voice sharp and direct, cutting through the swirling thoughts in Elias's mind. Elias didn't answer right away. He just looked at the cream in his hand, its smooth, cool surface, a stark contrast to the burning intensity of his thoughts. He thought of the woman with the shimmering hair, the soft voice that held a surprising undercurrent of strength, and the smile that had cut straight through him like light through fog, leaving him vulnerable and exposed. Nothing, he said finally, his decision firm. Not yet. Layla nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face. Good, because if anyone finds out what this is, you won't be the only one knocking on their door. And those who come after you won't be as gentlemanly. The threat hung unspoken in the air, a dark promise of violence to come. The store smelled like heaven. Always did. Mist had insisted on its scent was everything. A soft blend of rose, crushed sage, and a whisper of lemon balm drifted through the air, calming, yet alive. It wrapped around each customer the moment they stepped inside, like a welcome hug with purpose, subtly nudging them towards indulgence. It wasn't just a pleasant aroma, it was a carefully crafted spell, a silent invitation to unlock desires and treat oneself. Loon Bloom's boutique storefront was bathed in pale cream and blush pink tones, the colors of dawn and dreams. Gold-trimmed shelves held shimmering jars and elegant bottles, the labels all handwritten in curling script that seemed to dance in the soft light. Each product felt precious, imbued with a sense of history and magic. It was luxury meets lunar witchcraft, a blend of the mundane and the mystical, and the city she-wolves loved it. They craved the feeling of power that Loon Bloom bottled and sold. Mist moved behind the counter, meticulously refilling a tray of samples. Her movements were graceful, almost ritualistic, as if she were performing a delicate alchemy. Summer checked the day's sales on the front tablet, her brow furrowed in concentration. 17 pre-orders for the Moonstone mask already, Summer said with a grin, her voice light and bubbly. We haven't even posted the new photo set. Miss smiled, a genuine warmth radiating from her nearly white hair, which cascaded down her shoulders like spun moonlight. You think we'll hit our end-of-month goal by the weekend? If we don't, the moon's broken, Summer quipped, her eyes sparkling with amusement. They both laughed, the sound echoing softly in the tranquil space. It was a familiar ritual, this shared moment of levity, a reminder of the bond that held their business and perhaps something more, together. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful sound that momentarily masked the prickling sensation on Mist's skin. In stepped 3 wolves mid-30s, sleek, sharp-eyed, with Luna marks faintly glowing at their throats, high-ranked women, powerful and influential. The kind who knew power and wore it like perfume, a potent blend of confidence and ambition. They exuded an aura of privilege, a subtle warning that their desires were accustomed to being met. Mist greeted them with her usual warmth, her smile unwavering despite the sudden tension in the air. Ladies, welcome back. Refills today or something new? Both, said the tallest, her voice smooth and commanding, running her fingers along a row of glass vials with an almost possessive air. Your Hydra serum? My husband swears it's the reason I still look 24. Miss chuckled, a playful glint in her eye. Don't tell him it's your attitude. That got a laugh, a brittle sound that didn't quite reach their souls. The air felt thick with unspoken words, hidden agendas simmering beneath the surface. Another leaned over the counter, peering into the new line with a discerning eye. This one, what's the scent in it? There's something ancient in there. I swear my wolf sat up when I opened it last night. Mist smiled softly, her eyes holding a secret depth. It's a flower essence. Very old. It only grows for certain hands. That last part always earned a curious look, a spark of intrigue mixed with a touch of suspicion, but she never elaborated. It was part of the mystique, the unspoken promise of something extraordinary and unattainable for most. Then the third woman, one with ice blonde hair pulled back in a severe style and a wedding ring heavy enough to bruise, tilted her head, her gaze sharp and calculating. My alpha asked about your brand the other day. Summer glanced up from the tablet, her fingers freezing mid-swipe. The air in the boutique seemed to grow colder, the scent of roses and sage momentarily muted. Oh? Mist's tone stayed light, carefully neutral, but her senses were on high alert. He noticed the other Lunas using it, said we were all starting to smell the same. She laughed, a hollow sound that didn't reach her eyes, and Mist knew, with sudden certainty, that it wasn't a compliment. Summer moved closer, positioning herself subtly between Mist and the customers, her movements fluid and protective. The woman continued, her voice dropping to a lower register. Then he asked where it came from, wanted the supplier details, wanted to know who taught you how to extract that kind of bloom. Mist's smile faltered, just a breath, almost invisible, but it was enough. We don't use outside suppliers, she said carefully, her voice smooth and controlled. It's family tradition. The woman raised a brow, her expression one of cool disbelief. Well, my husband's alpha. You know how they are. Curious. Especially when they think something might be stronger than what they've got at home. The air shifted, the playful atmosphere replaced by a palpable sense of threat. The scent of roses and sage now felt suffocating, heavy with unspoken warnings. Mist's wolf stirred, alert beneath her skin, a low growl rumbling in her chest. She fought to keep it contained, to maintain her composure even as her instincts screamed for her to protect what was hers. The second woman chimed in, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. You know what they say? If something works too well, someone's gonna want to break it open and see how it ticks. Summer stepped in smoothly, her voice calm and reassuring. Good thing we have a strict no-reveal policy. Trade secrets and all that. Oh, of course, the blonde said, smiling too sweetly, her eyes holding a predatory glint. But secrets always have a way of slipping out, especially when alphas get involved. They made their purchases, the exchange, feeling more like a transaction than a genuine sale, and left in a swirl of expensive coats and gold-lined lipstick, leaving a lingering scent of power and veiled threats in their wake. The bell jingled, its cheerful sound now mocking and hollow. The door closed with a soft click, sealing them in with the unsettling silence. Silence settled like fog, thick and suffocating. Clinging to the gold-trimmed shelves and shimmering jars, the scent of Loonbloom now felt tainted, tinged with a dangerous undercurrent. Mist leaned both hands on the counter, her knuckles white, her gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond the delicately crafted displays. Summer broke the silence, her voice tight with suppressed anxiety. "Okay, that felt weird." Mist nodded, her jaw clenched. "Too many pointed questions. And too much mention of husbands," Summer added, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Mist looked at the samples on the tray, the jars lined up like soldiers awaiting orders. The scent of Luna Bloom hummed faintly beneath the surface, a promise and a vulnerability all in one. "We may need to think about security," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Summer turned to face her, her usual lightheartedness replaced by a steely resolve. "You thinking cameras or guards?" "I'm thinking we might be getting notice," Miss replied, her gaze meeting Summer's, her eyes filled with a growing unease. The wrong kind of noticed. And the wrong kind of wolves were drawn to power, like moths to a deadly flame. The game had changed, and Loonbloom was no longer just a boutique. It was a target. The last customer left with a cheerful wave, her tiny paper bag swinging from 2 fingers. Miss smiled politely until the bell above the door jingled shut, then exhaled long and slow, the sound almost lost in the quiet boutique. The day had been good, too good, the kind of good that made her nervous, like the lull before a storm, or the unnerving calm that settled over the forest before a hunt. She learned to trust her instincts, honed sharp by years of navigating the subtle currents of the supernatural world. Summer had already left for the evening, heading home to prep some shipment logistics and probably sneak in an episode of her favorite werewolf-themed reality show. Miss stayed behind to tidy up and prep a shelf for their new line Dusk Veil, a night serum meant to calm overstimulated wolves and ease shift aches. It was a labor of love, infused with moonstone and lavender, the scent alone enough to soothe even the most agitated shifter. She moved through the space like a gentle tide, organizing, wiping, restocking. The soft golden lighting warmed the blush pink and ivory of the boutique, making everything glow like a dreamscape, a sanctuary from the chaos of the city outside. The air hummed with the subtle energy of the enchanted oils and balms that lined the shelves, a haven for those who knew where to look. She was just putting the last jar on a mirrored tray, carefully aligning it with the others, when the bell above the door rang again, its chime sharp and unexpected. Mist blinked. They were closed in 15 minutes. Not enough time for a proper consultation. Certainly not enough time for the elaborate spell-casting rituals some of their clientele requested. She turned, a polite, if weary, smile already forming on her lips. The man who stepped in brought the outside world with him like a thundercloud wrapped in cashmere. The gentle dreamscape shimmer she'd cultivated seemed to flicker, threatened by his presence. Tall, powerfully built even beneath his clothes, broad shoulders that seemed to fill the doorway. Dark hair still wind-tousled, as if he'd just outrun a storm. Sharp jaw, 5 o'clock shadow that darkened his features, and eyes the color of midnight over still water, deep, intense, and unreadable. He wore a black button-down, sleeves rolled halfway up his forearms, revealing the corded muscles beneath, casual, controlled. But beneath the surface, Mist sensed a tension that crackled like static electricity. Mist's wolf lifted her head, a low, almost imperceptible whine escaping her unbidden. It was a primal response, a flicker of recognition that bypassed her conscious thought. She hadn't felt anything like it in, well, ever. The stranger paused just inside the door, glancing around the shop, his gaze sweeping over the shelves and displays like he was looking for someone or something. He didn't seem comfortable, more like a predator who had inadvertently wandered into a flower garden. "Evening," she offered gently, her voice deliberately calm, hoping to soothe the sudden agitation rippling through her. "We're about to close, but I've got a few minutes." He gave her a tight smile, a brief flash of white teeth in the dim light. "Won't take long." just curious. She nodded, stepping aside so he could move further in, her heart thrumming a strange, uneven rhythm against her ribs, looking for something in particular. He looked around the shop like it was foreign territory, and somehow familiar at the same time, a place he'd visited in a dream and couldn't quite place. His eyes lingered on a display of moonstone necklaces, then flicked away as if burned. "A friend told me your products were unique," he said, the word laced with a hint of skepticism. Mist arched a brow, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Well, we like to think they're special. Do they work?" His gaze snapped back to her, sharp and direct. She smiled, a genuine smile this time, infused with the quiet confidence that came from years of witnessing the impossible. "Only if you believe in good things." He didn't answer, his expression unreadable. She moved behind the counter, her movements fluid and graceful, reaching for a small glass jar with an opalescent sheen. "This one's our newest, Dusk Veil. It's calming. Helps regulate nerves and emotions after intense shifts." She held it up, the light catching the swirling colors within. "We've had excellent feedback from our beta testers." He stepped closer, drawn in by an invisible thread, close enough for her to feel his presence like a second sun, radiating heat and energy. The air thrummed between them, thick with unspoken tension. She could smell him now, a heady mix of storm and forest, with an underlying note of something wild and untamed that resonated deep within her. She held the jar out, her fingers brushing against the cool glass. He reached for it at the same moment. Their fingers brushed. It was like the air folded in on itself, the world shrinking to the space between their skin. A shock soft but deep rippled through her chest, a lightning strike to her soul. The carefully constructed walls around her heart crumbled, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. She inhaled sharply, a gasp that caught in her throat. So did he, his eyes widening, a flicker of surprise in their dark depths. Their eyes locked, held captive by an invisible force. Neither spoke, their breath held in their chests. And then their wolves did, not a loud howl, not spoken words, but in pull. In that ancient call written into their blood long before their bodies ever touched this earth, a primal connection that transcended logic and reason. Her wolf howled from deep inside her low and sweet, with a hunger she didn't understand, a yearning for something she hadn't even known she was missing. His eyes darkened, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His jaw tightened, and a muscle pulsed in his cheek. It was there, unmistakable. Mate. The word echoed in her mind, a foreign language she suddenly understood with perfect clarity. Mist pulled her hand back like she'd touched fire, the sudden withdrawal sending a jolt of adrenaline through her veins. The jar wobbled in his grip, but he steadied it, his fingers tightening around the glass. He set it down carefully between them, as if afraid it might shatter the fragile silence. She stepped back, putting distance between them, trying to regain her composure, trying to deny the undeniable pull humming through her veins. So did he, mirroring her movement, his eyes never leaving hers. Silence. A thick, suffocating silence that amplified the frantic beat of her heart. Then Elias cleared his throat, the sound rough and uneven, his composure returning like a carefully crafted mask. "Sorry. Wasn't expecting." Mist straightened, her hands clenched at her sides, her voice surprisingly steady. "Neither was I." His eyes flicked to the jar, then back to her, a question lingering in their depths. "Well," he said, his tone lighter, almost strained, like a rope stretched to its breaking point. "I'll take one. For someone." "Sure," she murmured, her movements automatic as she wrapped the jar in tissue paper and placed it in a small, elegant bag, her fingers trembling slightly. The familiar task offered a small measure of comfort, a distraction from the chaos raging within her. Their hands didn't touch again, the avoidance deliberate and palpable. She rang him up, her fingers fumbling with the keys. He paid in cash, placing the bills on the counter with a controlled precision that belied the turmoil she sensed within him. The silence stretched, taut, and uncomfortable. Mist handed over the little bag, their gazes brushing just once more, a fleeting connection that sent another shiver down her spine. "Thank you," he said, his voice quieter now, almost hesitant. Miss nodded, her throat tight. Have a good night. He turned and walked out, his movements stiff and unnatural. No glance back, no pause. The door clicked shut behind him, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Miss stood there long after the scent of him had faded storm and forest and something wild she didn't have a name for, something that resonated with the deepest, most primal part of her soul. Her heart still pounded, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. Her wolf was still whispering his name, a soft, yearning plea that she couldn't ignore. She didn't even know it yet, but the name was already imprinted on her soul, waiting to be discovered. The storm had arrived, and her life would never be the same. The night air was soft, unseasonably warm for early spring. It smelled like lilac and concrete, a strange urban pastoral blend that hung heavy in the air. Mist stepped out of Loom Bloom Naturals, pulling her coat tighter against the faint chill that the warm air couldn't quite banish. She locked the door behind her, the small click of the deadbolt oddly final, resonating in the quiet street. It was a sound that usually brought a sense of security, but tonight it only amplified the unsettling feeling that had been gnawing at her all day. They hadn't gotten security. Not yet. Tomorrow, they'd said. After the weekend rush, the promise hung in the air, a flimsy shield against the vulnerability that clawed at Mist's gut. She hated leaving the shop unguarded, especially with the buzz surrounding their newest Luna Bloom line. It was potent, and everyone knew it. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, the weight of it a familiar comfort, and started down the sidewalk, her heels tapping quietly on the pavement. The moonlight, filtered through the budding trees, made her hair shimmer silver pink in the shadows, a subtle, ethereal glow that mirrored the magic she wove into her skincare creations. The street was empty. At first, Thena's sharp scent, wrong, metallic, male, alpha. It cut through the sweet floral notes, a jarring intrusion that set her teeth on edge. Too late. She turned arms grabbed her, a crushing force that stole her breath. A rough cloth was pressed over her mouth and nose, the acrid tang of chemicals filling her senses. A growl rumbled in her ear, primal and possessive. Mist fought, kicked, her wolf lurching inside her like a whip crack, desperate to break free. But the cloth smelled of chemicals, insidious and potent. Her limbs grew heavy, her muscles refusing to obey, her thoughts slowed, blurring at the edges. The last thing she saw before the black closed in was a car door swinging open, revealing a glimpse of the softly lit interior and a tattooed hand reaching out, its elaborate pattern swirling in the dim light. She tried to scream, but the sound was trapped inside her, a silent, desperate cry, lost in the encroaching darkness. She woke up to cold stone. Her head pounded, each throb a painful reminder of her capture. Her arms were pulled behind her, wrists bound with something harsh and unforgiving, something burning and chafing against her skin, layered into the rope. It felt like barbed wire, digging deeper with every desperate move. The room was dim, damp, old concrete, stained with shadows and secrets. No windows. A single bare bulb hung overhead, swaying gently, casting long, distorted shadows that danced on the walls like mocking spirits. It flickered erratically, as if it knew something she didn't, some terrible truth that lurked just beyond the edge of her awareness. Mist groaned, shifting against her restraints, testing their limits. She could feel the raw burn on her wrists, a constant, throbbing ache that threatened to overwhelm her. She smelled earth, dust, and something darker sweat. Wolf. Blood from somewhere not recent but not forgotten either. The air was thick with the scent of suppressed violence, of fear and dominance, a chilling cocktail that made her stomach churn. A door creaked, the sound echoing through the silence like a gunshot. Boots echoed on the stairs, slow and deliberate, each step a promise of pain. A tall man in a dark gray jacket stepped into the light, his silhouette framed by the doorway. He was flanked by two enforcers, their faces hard and unreadable, their presence radiating menace. He looked at her like someone inspecting a weapon he couldn't wait to use, his eyes cold and calculating. Alpha Braxton, the mate of the ice-blonde woman from the boutique. The realization hit her like a blow to the gut. It wasn't just about the Luna Bloom. It was personal. "Well, he said, folding his arms across his chest, his voice a low, menacing drawl. You don't look so powerful now. Mist lifted her chin, defiance flickering in her eyes, even as her arms throbbed. You don't look so smart, considering I've got a very long list of customers who'll notice if I vanish, and some of them have friends who might take exception to this kind of hospitality. Braxton smirked, a cruel, predatory expression that sent a shiver down her spine. They'll be told you took a business sabbatical. Stress, exhaustion, pretty little burnout. You not so dramatic. She snarled, barely keeping the shift from tearing out of her skin. The urge to break free, to tear him apart, was almost unbearable, but she knew that would be a mistake. She needed to stay calm, to think. Braxton stepped closer, his gaze sharp and intense, boring into her like a physical force. You've got something in those creams of yours, something no other wolf has managed to replicate, something that makes you special. Mist stayed silent, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Let him guess. Let him underestimate her. You're going to tell me what it is? How do you grow it? How do you use it? Then you're going to make it just for my pack. Just for me. You're dreaming, she said, her voice tight but steady. Braxton grinned, a flash of teeth in the dim light. No, you are. He turned, nodding to his enforcers. Keep her here. Break her in gently. I want her to be cooperative, not dead. Yet. He disappeared back up the stairs, the sound of his boots fading into the distance, leaving her in flickering silence, alone with her fear and her determination. Across the house above, warm light spilled from the windows, illuminating the landscape grounds. Expensive whiskey filled the air, mingling with the scent of power and privilege. Marco sat quietly in the far corner of the lounge, half listening as a group of visiting alphas and betas talked shop. Supply chain headaches, new perimeter patrol protocols, nothing worth remembering. He was bored, restless, and increasingly disillusioned with the constant power plays and petty squabbles that defined pack life. He sipped his whiskey, more interested in the expensive bottle, a rare single malt from the Highlands, than the endless political maneuvering, until something shifted. A subtle change in the atmosphere, a ripple of unease that prickled his senses. Braxton's beta entered the room in a hurry, his face flushed and anxious. He crossed to the opposite side and leaned in close to another beta-one Marco didn't recognize, a newcomer from a neighboring pack. Their voices were low, hushed, and secretive, but not low enough. Marco's enhanced hearing picked up every word. Braxton's got the pink Luna downstairs, one of them muttered, his voice laced with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Grabbed her near her store. She didn't even see it coming. We've got her tied up tight. Marco froze, the glass pausing halfway to his lips. The rich amber liquid remained suspended in the air, forgotten. She's the real thing, the other said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The Bloom's legit. He wants the formula. Badly. Figures. The first one snorted, a cynical edge to his tone. If he can replicate it, he doesn't just control his pack, controls every Luna dumb enough to buy their product. He'd be swimming in favors. Marco didn't move, didn't blink. Just listened, his senses on high alert. And everything in him went cold, a sudden, chilling realization that cut through the haze of boredom and whiskey. Mist. The boutique, the two sisters. The captivating scent of Luna Bloom that had lingered in the air. The reason Elias had been so damn still at that restaurant, his usually sharp instincts strangely muted. He'd been contemplating strategies, not seduction. He set his glass down without finishing it, the crystal clinking softly against the polished surface. He rose slowly, deliberately, making sure no one was looking at him. No one noticed the sudden, intense focus that had hardened his features, and walked out of the lounge like he didn't hear a thing, his face a mask of indifference. Out in the corridor, he moved fast, his long strides eating up the distance. Out the front doors, past the guards, his movements fluid and purposeful. Into his car, the sleek black vehicle a silent promise of escape. He got in, turned the ignition, and the engine roared to life. and drove, tires squealing as he accelerated down the driveway. He didn't know where he was going yet, not precisely, but he knew who he needed to find, and he needed to think, to formulate a plan before he made the next move. Rushing in blindly would only get Mist hurt. Marco turned the wheel sharply, pulling into a shadowed side alley far enough from any patrols or Braxton's men to breathe. The darkness pressed in around him, a welcome anonymity. His fingers trembled slightly as he pressed Elias's number, his heart pounding against his ribs. 2 rings. Marco? Elias's voice was crisp, businesslike, betraying none of the anxiety he must be feeling. Don't talk, just listen. Marco's voice was low and urgent. Elias went silent, his breathing barely audible. I heard it. One of Braxton's betas told someone they've got her Mist. She's one of the sisters you asked for the business card from. She's in the basement, tied up. Marco's voice dropped even lower, barely a whisper. They took her from her store. They know about the bloom. They want her formulas. A beat of silence, thick with tension. You're on speaker, Elias said tightly, his voice strained. Dax is here. I didn't say anything, Marco added, his voice flat. Just left. I'm headed out now. We'll take it from here, Elias said, his voice firm despite the underlying tremor, then hung up. Elias stood frozen for a second, his mind racing, before reaching into his desk drawer and pulling out the slim white business card. Loom Bloom Naturals Artisan Skincare, Botanical Wellness is owned by Mist Summer Solin. He flipped it over. 2 numbers. He dialed the one labeled Summer. It rang once, twice. Then, hello? Summer? Elias's voice was calm but urgent, carefully controlled. This is Elias. I was at the restaurant the other night. You came in with your sister. You were sitting near the bar. Silence. Then a soft intake of breath, a barely perceptible gasp. You're the Alpha. Yes, I knew it, she murmured, her voice barely audible. Mist said she felt something that night. Said your scent sent her wolf purring. Elias blinked, stunned by the unexpected honesty. He hadn't realized his presence had affected her so strongly. So, yes, Summer continued, her voice sharpened now, the vulnerability gone. I know who you are, but not really. And I sure as hell don't know why you're calling me. I believe Mist has been taken. The silence was immediate and suffocating, a heavy blanket that seemed to press down on him. Summer's voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible. What did you just say? We have reason to believe that Alfred Braxton has her. We know about the Luna Bloom, about what you've built into your products. You think that's why they took her? Yes, Elias said, his voice steady and reassuring. Your formulas aren't just good, Summer. They're powerful. And someone's finally noticed. Someone wants what you have, and they're willing to do anything to get it. There was a pause, the silence broken only by the faint rustling of fabric. Then, she texted me earlier, said she was locking up. That was over an hour ago. Has she texted since? No. Has she answered your calls? I haven't called. Not yet. She sounded far away now, detached, hollow, like a puppet with its strings cut. Summer, Elias said gently, his voice laced with concern. I need to meet with you. We both do. Me and my brother Dax. We need your help finding her. Another pause. Then Summer let out a bitter laugh, a harsh, mirthless sound. You think I'm just going to meet 2 strangers in the middle of the night because of a phone call? Seriously? Elias didn't push. He understood her hesitation, her fear. I get it. I wouldn't trust us either. But if we were part of the problem, we wouldn't be warning you now. Silence, heavy with suspicion and fear. I have pepper spray, she said flatly, her voice resolute. You'll only need it if Dax talks too much, Elias said dryly. Dax rolled his eyes but didn't comment. Summer exhaled sharply, the sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Fine. Meet me behind the shop. 30 minutes. Don't make me regret this. We won't. She hung up, the line going dead. Elias turned to Dax, his face grim. Let's go. The basement was a tomb of cold, a damp, chill, clinging to the air that belied the season. Spring was supposed to be rebirth, warmth, but down here, Winter still reigned. The concrete floor sucked the heat from her body, each ache in her muscles magnified by the permeating cold. Above, she imagined the night sky, starless and suffocating, a heavy blanket pressed against the world. Mist forced her eyes open, the gritty feeling of exhaustion clinging to her lids. A single bare bulb swung precariously overhead, casting a nauseating dance of light and shadow. The shadows writhed on the damp walls, mimicking spectral figures, ghosts trapped between worlds, unsure of how to move on, much like herself. Her head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, the legacy of whatever drug they had used to subdue her. Her lip was split, a thin line of dried blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. Her left eye was puffed and swollen, obscuring her vision. But none of it truly mattered. Not yet. She was still breathing. A shallow, ragged inhale, but air nonetheless filled her lungs. A precious, vital commodity, and, despite everything, she was still her. A core of defiance burned within her, untouchable. The coarse rope bit into her wrists, a painful reminder of her captivity. It was cinched tight behind her back, cutting off circulation. Her ankles were similarly bound, anchoring her to the rickety wooden chair, its legs groaning under her strained weight. Deep within her wolf stirred, a low, guttural growl vibrating beneath her skin. Fury, raw and untamed, surged through her veins. She was a creature of instinct, of freedom, and she was caged. No one cages a Luna, especially not for long. She sucked in another breath, tasting the cloying air, stagnant and stale, thick with the smell of neglect. But beneath the grime and damp, she detected something else, the familiar oily tang of the boiler, the metallic bite of rust eating into the old pipes. And then, a sharper note, a spicy, expensive cologne. Male, authoritative, guard, close. Mist's gaze, sharpened by adrenaline and a lifetime of instincts, flicked to the doorway. Two enforcers sauntered in, their voices low, laced with boredom and careless disdain. They were young, complacent, and dangerously underestimated. Still don't get the fuss. The boss acts like she's royalty. Because she is, idiot, the other muttered, his voice holding a hint of grudging respect. Pink Luna thought they were extinct. Well, guess she's not anymore, he sneered, leaning closer, his breath reeking of cheap cigarettes and stale beer. His eyes raked over her, stripping her bare. Shame. You'd think she'd smell sweeter. Mist slowly raised her head, the dim light catching in her eyes, turning them into pools of molten gold. The pain in her body receded, replaced by a cold, unwavering focus. Oh, she rasped, her voice rough from disuse and pain, but surprisingly steady. You will regret saying that. Before he could react, before the words could even fully register, she jerked the chair violently to one side, aiming for the uneven dip in the aged concrete floor. The back legs of the chair caught with a jarring crack. She twisted mid-fall, throwing her weight against the floor with brutal force. Old wood splintered and gave way. A searing pain exploded in her shoulder, radiating down her arm like lightning. But the ropes loosened, just enough. She rolled, fueled by pure will. With a desperate surge, she shoved one hand free, the rough rope tearing at her skin. Her fingers groped blindly until they closed around a jagged shard of the broken chair leg. Wood, sharp and unforgiving, became her weapon. One guard moved, his reaction sluggish and predictable. She was on him before he could utter a sound, jamming the splinter of wood deep into his thigh. He screamed, a high-pitched keening that echoed in the confined space. Ignoring his agony, she snatched his heavy baton from his belt and brought it down in a swift, brutal arc, connecting with his temple. The second guard lunged, but her wolf roared to the surface, lending her speed and fury she didn't know she possessed. Mist ducked low, avoiding his grasping hands, then came up hard. A punch to the jaw, expertly placed, followed by a brutal knee to the groin, and finished with a final, decisive blow to his skull with the stolen baton. He dropped like a dead weight, sprawling on the cold floor, breath ragged, blood trickling down her temple, Mingling with the sweat and grime on her face, she stood alone in the silence, the only sound the pounding of her own heart, free. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the key she'd taken from the fallen guard, her fingers clumsy and unresponsive. She finally managed to unlock the door and bolted up the staircase, her bare feet slapping against the cold, unforgiving stone. Outside, night wrapped around her like a second skin, a welcome cloak of darkness. The moon was high and pale, almost skeletal, with wisps of clouds scuttling across its face like fleeing spirits. She didn't stop. She didn't dare to. Street by street she ran, past manicured hedgerows and flickering street lamps, past shadows that danced and stretched in her peripheral vision, past scents that flickered like half-forgotten memories, freshly cut grass, exhaust fumes, the sweet cloying smell of honeysuckle. And finally, through the blur of exhaustion and pain, she saw them. The warm, glowing windows of the shop. Sanctuary. Home. The back alley door stood just ahead, beckoning her forward. As she stumbled toward it, her legs threatening to give way beneath her, headlights flashed, blinding her momentarily. A car. Sleek and black, like a predator emerging from the shadows. Two figures were stepping out, their silhouettes stark against the harsh glare. Familiar silhouettes. Summer, her sister, her protector, and Elias, her mate, her anchor. Mist collapsed against the doorframe, bruised, bleeding, breathless, but alive. And almost home. Their heads snapped toward her at once, recognizing her instantly despite the darkness and her disheveled state. Elias's wolf roared in his chest. She could feel it, a wave of possessive fury and overwhelming relief washing over her. Mist. His voice was a low growl, barely audible. She looked up, her eyes burning with a mixture of pain, relief, and simmering rage. Took you long enough. Mist leaned against the cool glass of the boutique's front door, her breathing still sharp, edged, and uneven. Every inhale scraped against her ribs, a painful reminder of her recent escape. The metal handle had dug into her ribs when she stumbled in, and she was sure there was a bruise blooming under her skin, a dark purple testament to Braxton's brutality, but none of that mattered. She was back. Back in the familiar embrace of Luna Bloom, back with her family. The scent of the shop, usually a balm to her spirit, felt heavy now, tainted with the memory of what she'd endured and the threat looming over them. Elias held the door behind her, his tall frame a protective barrier against whatever might follow. His eyes, usually warm and hazel, were now sharp and focused, never leaving her, as if she might vanish again into the shadows if he blinked too long. The air around him vibrated with suppressed power. The tautness in his jaw, the slight tremor in his hands, betrayed the barely contained wolf, struggling to break free. He looked ready to shift, to tear anything apart that dared to come near her. She found a sliver of comfort in that primal protectiveness, a stark contrast to the cool calculation she'd witnessed in Braxton's eyes. Summer rushed from behind the counter, a whirlwind of worry and relief. "Oh God, Mist." Her voice cracked, thick with unshed tears. "What the hell happened to you? You look like—" She choked, unable to articulate the sheer terror etched on her sister's face. Summer's hands fluttered, wanting to touch, to comfort, but hesitating, unsure of where Mist might be injured. She knew what Braxton was capable of. Whispers of his ruthlessness had even reached their secluded shop. The sight of her sister, usually vibrant and self-assured, now broken and bruised, ignited a fierce protectiveness within her. "Like I walked through hell with my chin up," Miss muttered, managing a ghost of a smile that didn't quite reach her haunted eyes. "Help me to the chair." Each step was an agony, a symphony of throbbing pain that threatened to buckle her knees. The world swam around her in hazy circles. She just needed to sit, to breathe, to feel safe for a moment. Summer slipped under her sister's arm, her touch gentle but firm, and helped ease her onto the velvet stool near the blending bar. The boutique smelled like rosewater and crushed sage, a comforting, familiar scent that usually soothed her soul. Now, it was a bittersweet reminder of everything they were about to lose, masking the metallic tang of fear clinging to the air. Beneath it all, A bass note of something old and earthy clung to the air, the magical heart of Luna Bloom. Home. But a home is about to be shattered. She closed her eyes briefly, drawing on the earth's power, a small act of defiance against the fear that threatened to consume her. Elias paced once, his energy restless and contained, then turned toward Dax, who was hovering near the front window, a silent sentinel. He scanned the street outside with the intensity of a seasoned soldier, his gaze sharp and wary, as if the wolves were already at the door, ready to tear down their sanctuary. His knuckles were white as he gripped an unseen weapon, his body coiled and ready to unleash the fury he had spent years learning to control. He knew Braxton, knew his methods. They were out of time. "They're coming," Elias said, his voice low and gravelly, a pronouncement rather than a suggestion. "Braxton won't waste time once he realizes she's gone. He'll be furious." He'd seen Braxton's fury before, a cold, calculated rage that left nothing but destruction in its wake. And now Mist was the target. "He won't send just one or two," Dax added, his face grim. "He'll bring a pack, probably rogues too. He's not subtle. He'll want to make an example to anyone else who dared defy him, an example to any Luna tempted to stray." Mist rubbed her temples, trying to clear the fog of pain and fear that threatened to overwhelm her. "They wanted me for the bloom, or maybe to control us through it. They were talking about alphas, women in our shop, husbands, asking questions. They wanted leverage." She squeezed her eyes shut, seeing flashes of faces, hearing snippets of conversations, things she hadn't understood at the time but now clicked into terrifying clarity. Summer nodded grimly, her face pale beneath her freckles. One of them said her alpha had been asking about the ingredients, said he felt strangely calm. "I thought she was just making conversation, bragging about how much he loved the lotion." Her voice trembled with regret. Naive, she thought. She had been so naive. She should have seen the signs. "You need to shut it down," Elias said firmly, his voice leaving no room for argument. His gaze was unwavering, his purpose clear. Survival depended on decisiveness. Summer looked up, confused, her brow furrowed. Shut what down? The shop was their life, their legacy. The bloom was their magic, their connection to their ancestors. To shut it down felt like cutting off a limb. "Everything," he said, his gaze sweeping over the overflowing shelves and meticulously organized displays. "The whole shop. The bloom. Any serum, lotion, powder, salvave. It contains bloom. It's a weapon in the wrong hands. They'll come for that next. They'll dismantle this place brick by brick to get to the source." His words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implication. Mist straightened, her pain already tucked under the hard edge of leadership, the Luna blood rising to the surface. The fear didn't disappear, but it was channeled, focused into a steely determination. "We've got 5 coolers in the back, 2 stock safes, and 2 weeks' worth of shipments prepped for wholesalers." The figures were recited with mechanical precision, a desperate attempt to quantify the immeasurable loss. The numbers were a shield, a way to maintain control in the face of utter chaos. Elias's jaw clenched. "Load it all. Whatever you can carry. We take it with us. The rest, destroy it. Burn it to ash if you have to." The thought of destroying years of work, of severing their connection to the bloom, was agonizing. But it was a necessary sacrifice. Dax looked over his shoulder, his eyes filled with urgency. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before they start sweeping the area. Maybe less. We've got to move. Now." The urgency in his voice was infectious, a jolt of adrenaline that cut through the fog of despair. Summer didn't waste time arguing. She darted behind the counter, her fingers flying as she unlocked the back door. The sisters worked in near silence, their movements practiced and efficient, born from years of working side by side. They opened hidden drawers and cabinets built into the apothecary wall, revealing the intricate secrets of their craft. Compartment after compartment slid out, revealing rows of silver jars and violet glass bottles labeled with elegant script. Every one of them carried a small, faint shimmer in the lighter signature of the bloom's presence, a magical heartbeat captured within glass. Each jar, each bottle held a piece of their history, a fragment of their souls. Mist stood shakily, pushing through the ache that threatened to drag her back down. Summer, get the blends. I'll take the crushed stock. Though every movement blazed a trail of agony, not a single pain could break her will. Elias stepped in, his hand brushing her lower back, a possessive, protective gesture. You shouldn't be standing. You're in no condition to be lifting anything. He hated seeing her in pain, hated the thought of her pushing herself past her limits. I'm not sitting while my life's work goes up in smoke, she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands, and he didn't argue. He knew better than to try and reason with Aluna when she was defending her pack. He knew the fire that burned within her, a fire that could melt steel and move mountains. Boxes were pulled, lids were secured. Bottles clinked into crates as Elias and Dax carried the heaviest loads to the SUV idling out back, the engine a low, menacing growl in the sudden silence. Summer had tears in her eyes, blurring her vision, but her jaw was set in a line of steely determination. Mist's hands trembled as she packed, each touch sending a fresh wave of pain through her body, but her movements were precise, guided by years of ingrained skill. The bloom was not just a product, it was an extension of themselves. They were Luna's. This was survival. This was their legacy, and they would fight for it. They would not be victims. They would not be broken. They would adapt. They would overcome. They would endure. 10 minutes in, Dax came jogging back inside, his face flushed with exertion. One more load and we're out. I'll handle the cooler packs. Gotta be temperature stable, right? Don't want the bloom getting funky. He tried to inject a bit of levity into the situation, a small attempt to ease the tension that hung thick in the air. Middle unit, Summer called, her voice tight with anxiety, and use the biocrates. They're light sealed. And be careful. Those blends are extremely sensitive to jostling. Every detail mattered. Every precaution was necessary. The bloom was too important to lose. On it. Mist turned to Elias as he helped her lift a stack of blend boxes, the weight heavy in her weakened arms. Thank you for coming to get me. For believing. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of unspoken gratitude, of renewed hope. He looked at her, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim boutique light, a hint of the wolf within. He saw not just the bruises and the fear, but the strength and resilience that shone through it all. I didn't believe at first, he admitted, his voice soft and vulnerable. Pink Lunas were always a myth, a whispered legend, but I smelled the ancient aroma when I saw you across the restaurant, my wolf. He hesitated, searching for the right words to describe the primal pull he had felt, the undeniable certainty that had washed over him. She raised a brow, a flicker of amusement dancing in her eyes despite the grim circumstances. What did your wolf say? The question was a challenge, a playful tease that belied the seriousness of their situation. Elias gave a half smile, a rare flash of genuine warmth in his hardened features. He didn't say. He howled, loudly, and it was the sound of his wolf's howl that cemented their bond. Mist laughed, a sound that was both joyful and tinged with hysteria, but it broke into a sharp breath as a searing pain caught her side. Elias reached for her, his grip firm and supportive, just as she steadied herself. You're not doing this anymore, he said softly, his voice husky with emotion. Let us protect you. Let us protect this. He had found his purpose, his reason for being. He would stand by her side no matter the cost. She met his gaze, not soft or yielding, but strong and unwavering. Only if we fight beside each other. I won't be a damsel waiting to be rescued. She was a Luna, a leader, a warrior. She would not be confined to the role of a helpless victim. Outside, the last crate slid into place with a resounding thud. Dax slammed the SUV hatch closed, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet. Time's up. Let's go. They could be here any minute. Mist took one last look at the Shop the Soft rose wallpaper, peeling slightly at the edges, the dried lavender above the counter, its scent now a ghostly whisper, the soft glow of the bloom still lingering in the room like moonlight caught in a bottle. A lifetime of memories was trapped within these walls. First flower pressed, first potion brewed, first moon cycle, and the magic it brought. Each item was a memory. She walked to the breaker box and flipped a switch. The lights dimmed, flickering once before dying completely, plunging the boutique into near darkness. The Bloom's faint luminescence was the only light left, a haunting reminder of what was being left behind. Elias held the door open, his hand extended in quiet offering. Miss stepped inside without hesitation, her gaze forward, heart steady, trusting in the man at her side and the sister at her back. The past was behind them, its shadows burned away. The future, unwritten, unfolding. But side by side, they would meet it head on. Whatever came, they would shape it together. The SUV, a black behemoth, devoured the narrow, winding roads that snaked away from the town's edge. Its high-powered headlights sliced through the dense forest like twin, luminescent swords. Pine needles and damp earth clung to the air, but underneath the familiar scent lay something darker, something primal. It reeked of danger, a suffocating pressure that rose like acrid smoke on a wind only Elias could feel. Elias drove, his jaw a hard knot, knuckles white as he gripped the leather-wrapped steering wheel. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to spring. Mist sat beside him, swallowed by the oversized wool of Summer's cardigan. She cradled a precious bottle of Bloom-infused serum in her hands, handling it with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics or newborn babes. It was spun glass and fervent prayers, their survival distilled into a single vial. Dax followed close behind in the second vehicle, Summer pale and silent in the back seat. Both SUVs were packed to the roof, overflowing with overflowing crates, humming coolers, and every precious ounce of Bloom they could scavenge and carry. Their hasty escape had left little room for comfort, only desperate necessity. Elias tapped his comm unit, quickly syncing it to the pack line. Every member was on high alert. "Malik," he barked, his voice tight with suppressed urgency. "Code Ember." The line crackled with static before a calm, controlled voice came through, sharp and alert despite the hour and the tension. "We're listening, Alpha. I need the safe house sealed. All perimeter wards reinforced. 3-layer watch rotation. Starting now." The words came out clipped and precise, drilled into him through years of training. Every syllable was a shield, a promise of protection. "Understood. ETA, 20 minutes. We're coming in hot. 2 females. Assets secured." He kept his tone neutral, devoid of emotion. Emotion was a liability. There was a barely perceptible pause on the other end. Malik understood. He wouldn't press for details over the open comms. This was war, whispered in the dark. "Roger that. We'll be ready." Miss turned her head slowly, her gaze fixed on Elias. "That was your beta?" "One of them," Elias confirmed, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror, ensuring Dax was maintaining a safe distance. "The house is heavily warded, off-grid, and protected by enchantments my pack's witches layered in over centuries. No one gets in unless we let them, or unless they're strong enough to break through. And even then, he let the threat hang unspoken." Mist nodded once, a small, almost imperceptible movement. "Good, because if they're tracking me, they're tracking the Bloom." The weight of the statement settled in the small cabin, thick and suffocating. Elias cast a glance her way, his voice low and laced with a predatory undertone. "And if they are, they're walking into a trap." He offered a fleeting, grim smile. "One we've been preparing for a long time." Behind them, Dax's headlights remained locked in perfect rhythm, a silent confirmation of his dedication and readiness. As the trees coalesced into an impenetrable wall and the road narrowed to a barely discernible path, Elias subtly pressed a panel hidden beneath the dash. A low rumble echoed through the forest as a hidden gate, buried under thick moss and weathered rock, groaned open in front of them, revealing a dark maw in the forest's embrace. Mist leaned forward, peering into the gloom. "You live out here." "Not live," Elias corrected, his voice laced with a hint of weariness. "Hide, train, protect. This place is where secrets go to stay safe, and sometimes where dangerous things are kept contained." They drove another half-mile, the SUVs jostling over the uneven terrain before the trees finally broke open into a small, secluded clearing. The house emerged from the darkness, a formidable structure that seemed to grow from the very earth. 3 stories of black stone and thick, rough-hewn timber, half hidden by climbing ivy that clung to its walls like grasping claws. The weak moonlight glinted off its darkened windows, reflecting nothing of the interior. No internal lights betrayed its presence. Wolves lined the perimeter, standing motionless, like carved sentinels, their eyes glowing with an inner luminescence. More moved silently and unseen through the dense tree line, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look, unless you possessed the gift or the curse of heightened senses. As soon as the SUV screeched to a halt, 2 of the sentinel wolves shifted into human form mid-stride, their transformations fluid and practiced. They pulled on hastily donned pants and strapped on comms gear, their movements quick and efficient. "Alpha," one said, nodding his head respectfully to Elias. "We've swept the back forest, all clear." The southern trails got faint rogue traces, but nothing breached the boundary. "Double it anyway," Elias commanded, his gaze sweeping the perimeter, assessing it with a practiced eye. "We'll handle security rotation from inside. Nobody in or out unless I say." The guard nodded, his expression unwavering. "Yes, Alpha." Inside, the house breathed a deep, ancient air. The scent of cedar and ash mingled with the musty aroma of leather-bound books and rain-soaked stone. It was a place of history and power, of secrets and untold stories. Mist followed silently as Elias led them down a narrow hallway, lined with portraits of stern-faced men and women whose eyes seemed to follow them. The hallway opened into a steel-reinforced room, a floor-to-ceiling vault lined with reinforced shelves. The air within hummed with a low, barely perceptible thrum, a testament to its temperature-controlled and light-sealed environment. "The safe room," Elias said, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "Only 3 people know the code besides Dax and me, and they wouldn't dare betray us." Summer whistled softly, her eyes wide as she took in the imposing room. "Remind me to ask your decorator for tips." "Only if you like high-end paranoia," Dax muttered, grunting as he came in with the last heavy crate. They unloaded every bottle, jar, blend, and container of bloom into the vault, arranging them carefully on the shelves. Elias sealed the vault with a touch of his hand, the latent power in his skin sparking briefly against the cold steel, and an incantation muttered under his breath, words of power and protection woven into the very fabric of the room. The door hissed shut with a resolute locking click, the sound echoing in the tense silence. Then came silence, broken only by the faint hum of the vault's internal systems. Miss stood still in the hallway, her shoulders relaxing slightly as she finally exhaled, releasing the breath she'd been unconsciously holding. "Okay, so now what?" "Now," Elias said, turning to face her, his eyes intense. "We plan." The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. "And rest," Summer added, nudging her sister gently. "You escaped a psychopath and carried half a shop's worth of bloom on your back. You're running on fumes, Mist. You need to recharge." Mist leaned against the cool stone wall, her face pale. "I'm fine." The word sounded brittle, unconvincing even to her ears. "You're not," Elias said, and his voice was low, gentle, but firm, leaving no room for argument. "But you're safe. Here, you're safe. No one will touch you here." She looked up, her eyes locking with his. For a beat, the room was utterly still, time suspended. She saw in his gaze a depth of understanding, a promise of protection, and something else, something she couldn't quite decipher. And then her wolf stirred, not out of fear, but recognition. A low internal rumble of acknowledgement that resonated deep within her bones. The scent of pine and ash mingled with something else, something primal and undeniable. The wolf knew. And so, finally, did she. Mist stood in the upstairs bedroom Elias had given her, the unfamiliar space feeling both like a sanctuary and a gilded cage. The window offered a breathtaking vista of the moonlit woods that surrounded the safe house, the silver light painting the trees in ethereal hues. But the beauty offered no comfort. The bloom vault, containing secrets vital to the war, was locked tight, a physical manifestation of the secrets and dangers swirling around her. Her sister, Lily, oblivious to the turmoil, was asleep in the guest room, a fragile innocent she desperately wanted to protect. Elias and Dax were still downstairs, their hushed whispers carrying on the night air, strategizing, plotting, whispering war. But Miss knew it wouldn't be enough. Their efforts, valiant as they were, wouldn't suffice against the forces arrayed against them. She felt the weight of fate pressing down on her shoulders, a burden she alone could bear. She moved deliberately to the dresser where Elias had thoughtfully left her phone charging, the familiar device a lifeline to another world. Her hands, surprisingly steady despite the churning anxiety in her gut, unlocked the screen. She navigated to a secure application, a communication channel so heavily encrypted that only 7 wolves in the world possessed access. A network forged in blood and loyalty, a promise whispered across generations. She pressed the call button, the silence in the room amplifying the sound of the connection attempting to establish. 3 rings, each one a hammer blow against the fragile peace she had found in this temporary refuge. Then a voice, clipped and fierce, filled the small space, carrying the weight of authority and unwavering devotion. "Luna?" Mist closed her eyes, the sound of that single word sending a jolt of energy through her. It was a recognition, a promise, a validation of her identity. "It's me. It's time. Is it confirmed?" The voice demanded, urgency lacing through it. "Yes. They know. I was taken. I escaped." She spoke the words with a flat affect, refusing to dwell on the terror and vulnerability she had experienced. A pause, thick with unspoken questions and barely suppressed rage. She could almost feel the tension crackling through the phone line. "We're coming." The words were a vow, a guarantee. Mist's throat tightened, emotion threatening to choke her. She forced herself to remain composed, the Luna needing to be strong, to be strategic. "Bring the Bloom Guard. Full formation, no trainees." This was not a training exercise. This was war. "You think we're bringing anyone but the elite?" The voice snapped, a sharp retort laced with possessive protectiveness. "You're the Rosemoon Luna. You're the last of your kind. We'll burn the world before we let anyone touch you again." The call ended abruptly, leaving Mist alone again in the echoing silence. She stood there a moment longer, breathing deeply through the tension coiled in her chest, letting the storm gather behind her ribs. The Rosemoon Pack was coming, and with them, a reckoning. 2 hours later, Elias, ever vigilant, caught movement on the edge of the perimeter. The woods, previously silent, now seemed to hum with an unseen energy. He was at the front balcony, scanning the darkness, when the first vehicle pulled in, a matte black SUV, sleek and menacing, silent as a ghost. It was followed by another, and another, a procession of darkness emerging from the forest. 10 total, all unmarked, all dark, an ominous symbol of the power about to be unleashed. Dax came to stand beside him, arms crossed, his face a mask of grim anticipation. He, too, sensed the shift in the atmosphere, the palpable presence of something ancient and powerful. The car doors opened in unison, a silent ballet of coordinated action, and out stepped the Rosemoon Pack. All female, all lethal. Hair braided down their backs in intricate patterns, the dark strands interwoven with silver threads, a visual representation of their lineage and magic. Leathers reinforced with spell stitching, offering protection against both physical and magical attacks. Eyes glowing faintly with the kind of magic no alpha dared challenge, a testament to their unique heritage and unwavering loyalty. These weren't girls playing at war. These weren't ordinary warriors. These were protectors of a legend, guardians of the last Rosemoon. Elias couldn't speak for a second, the sight of them stripping him of his usual composure. Neither could Dax, the normally unflappable warrior rendered speechless by the sheer presence of the Rosemoon Pack. The frontmost woman stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful, yet radiating an aura of undeniable power. Long silvery hair was tied in a crown braid, framing a face both beautiful and deadly. A sword, its hilt gleaming in the moonlight, was strapped to her back, and a pistol, perfectly balanced, was holstered to each hip. She was a living embodiment of strength and grace, a warrior queen. "Where is she?" she asked. her voice sharp as steel, cutting through the silence with its commanding presence. Elias swallowed, momentarily intimidated by her gaze. Inside, safe, good, she said, her expression softening slightly, then turned and gave a curt signal. The rest of the women moved like smoke, fanning out silently, taking positions around the house, on the roof, in the trees. Their movements were fluid and precise, a testament to years of rigorous training and an innate understanding of combat. One vanished into the mist, her presence fading into the shadows as if she had become one with the night. Another began casting a fresh ward along the threshold, the air shimmering with arcane energy as she reinforced the existing protections. Dax blinked, his voice hushed with awe. They're like a cross between Valkyries and assassins. Yeah, Elias said, still watching the silent professionals deploy, a newfound respect and trepidation coloring his tone. And we're lucky they're on our side. Mist came to the door then, drawn by the commotion, her hair braided back, revealing the sharp angles of her face, her eyes bright with a mixture of relief and quiet determination. The moment the silver-haired woman saw her, she bowed low, a gesture of profound respect and unwavering allegiance. My Luna. Mist stepped forward, no fear in her stance, her shoulders squared, radiating an aura of authority. Thank you, Rena. You arrived faster than I dared hope. We felt it, Rena said, straightening, her gaze locking with Mist's. Across the bond, something shattered. Mist nodded, a flicker of pain crossing her face. It did. The psychic link between her and her pack was a tangible force, one that allowed them to feel her pain, her fear, her need. Then she turned toward Elias and Dax, presenting them to her protectors. This is the Rosemoon pack, my pack. Elias met her gaze, seeing a newfound strength and confidence in her eyes. They're not what I expected. Neither, she said, smiling faintly, a hint of mischief playing on her lips. Are you? The night had settled thick around the safe house, like velvet quiet, but not asleep. The surrounding woods held their breath, a symphony of rustles and chirps hushed to a near imperceptible murmur. The air itself seemed to vibrate with unseen energy, a counterpoint to the tranquil facade. Mist stood alone in the back garden, barefoot in the dewy grass, a steaming mug of tea warming her hands. The wind stirred gently, carrying the complex scents of damp moss, intoxicating night jasmine, and the sharp, clean aroma of cedarwood. Her wolf, still edgy from their recent escape, had curled just beneath her skin, a constant, low hum of alertness, but no longer consumed by panic flight. They were safe. For now, the gnawing fear that had been their constant companion for weeks had receded, replaced by a fragile sense of respite, but Mist knew better than to let her guard down completely. The enemy was relentless, their reach far and wide. She heard him before she saw him, the subtle shift in the air, a deeper resonance in the earth beneath her feet. His footsteps were heavy but unhurried, boots crunching on the stone path that led from the house to the small clearing where she stood. He didn't speak right away, allowing the silence to stretch to weave itself around them. He just walked until he was beside her and stood in silence, looking up at the star-strewn sky, a dark silhouette against the inky canvas. I didn't think I'd see you again, Elias said finally, his voice low and scratchy, a rough edge betraying the day's strain and the battles fought, both internal and external. The words hung in the cool air, weighted with unspoken emotions. Mist didn't look at him. She kept her gaze fixed on the horizon, on the dark line of trees that separated them from the rest of the world. Neither did I. The words were clipped, a defense against the vulnerability that threatened to overwhelm her. They stood together, not touching, close enough to feel the other's heat, yet separated by an invisible barrier of unspoken history and unresolved conflicts. The space between them was both nothing and everything, a chasm of missed opportunities and a bridge of undeniable connection. I'm not sure I thanked you, she added, her tone neutral but steady, carefully masking the flood of gratitude that surged within her. For helping us. We're getting our supplies out of the shop. You broke your bindings and made it back. A feat on his own, Mist, Elias said, glancing sideways at her. his eyes searching her face. I just opened the last door. He downplayed his role, but she knew the risks he'd taken, the alliances he'd jeopardized. She gave a small laugh, soft and bitter, a sound tinged with exhaustion and disbelief. Still, doors are tricky when you're bleeding and barefoot. The memory of her escape, the pain and desperation, still lingered, a raw reminder of their perilous situation. That earned a smile from him, a real one that crinkled the corners of his eyes, chasing away the darkness that often shadowed his features. Small, lopsided, honest. It was a rare sight, and it made her heart ache in a way she couldn't quite explain. He turned toward her, more fully now, his posture shifting, his attention focused solely on her. The moonlight painted silver across his dark hair, highlighting the strong lines of his jaw, the rugged planes of his face. And for a moment, Miss saw not just the alpha, not just a potential mate burdened by responsibility and duty, but the man beneath, the one who felt wholeheartedly, who cared, who yearned. You could have kept running, he said, his voice dropping, becoming almost a whisper. You could have taken Summer and the Bloomguard and disappeared into the mountains, created a new life far away from all this. Why stay? Mist sipped her tea, buying herself time to formulate an answer, to untangle the complex web of emotions that bound her to this place, to this man. Because disappearing never saves anyone. It's just delaying the inevitable. She paused, the words catching in her throat. And because she hesitated, her gaze dropping to the damp grass. Because I felt you. That night in the shop, when I was bound, helpless, I felt your presence like a beacon. I felt it too, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't understand it, not really. It was overwhelming, terrifying. My wolf knew, though. The second you touched that jar, he damn near lost his mind. He was clawing to get to you, to protect you. Mist finally turned her head to meet his gaze, her eyes searching his, seeking the truth in their depths. Mine purred. She'd never done that before. I thought she was broken. I thought the bindings had damaged her, somehow. Elias chuckled under his breath, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through her. Not broken, just waiting for her other half. The silence that followed wasn't awkward or strained. It was warm, rich with the things neither of them had words for yet, filled with the unspoken promises of a shared future. 1,000 thoughts moved behind Elias's eyes, a kaleidoscope of hopes and fears, but he only said one, come inside. It's cold. Mist hesitated, considering the invitation, weighing the implications. Then she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. I just needed a minute to feel something normal, to breathe. Tea under the moon is pretty normal for a pink Luna, he teased, a hint of humor flickering in his eyes. She raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips. Is that a joke? A terrible one, yeah, he admitted with a shrug. They walked back toward the house together, side by side, their steps synchronized, their shoulders brushing lightly, not quite touching, not yet. The anticipation was palpable, a silent promise hanging in the air. The safe house interior was quiet, the atmosphere heavy, with the peace only exhaustion could bring. Dax had taken first perimeter rotation with Rena, their vigilance a constant shield against the dangers that lurked in the shadows. Summer had finally crashed on the couch, wrapped in 3 throws and a sleep charm, her face pale and drawn with fatigue. Mist walked into the small, cluttered kitchen and set her tea mug in the sink, the ceramic clinking softly against the porcelain. Elias lingered at the doorway, unsure, his body tense with unspoken desires. Do you want something? She asked, her voice soft, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Yeah, he said, his voice husky with emotion, his gaze unwavering. To understand you, to know what makes you, the woman who's faced down death and still manages to bloom. She blinked, surprised by the intensity of his words, the depth of his interest. That's a big request. I've got time, he replied with a quiet certainty. Mist leaned back against the cool, smooth surface of the counter, crossing her arms, a flicker of amusement dancing in her eyes. All right. I like baths over showers. I hate the smell of peppermint. It makes my nose itch, and I cry during sad commercials, even when I try not to, especially the ones with puppies. Elias tilted his head, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Go on. I make the best bloom serum in 3 regions. My grandfather taught me when I was a little girl. Summer says I snore when I'm overtired and have ingested too much caffeine. And when I shifted the first time, my fur wasn't white like our mother's sit was pink. Light like peach blossom. Everyone said it was a myth, a glitch, a goddess's joke. It wasn't, Elias said quietly, his voice filled with conviction. It was a signal, a sign of something extraordinary. Miss' throat tightened, the weight of his words pressing down on her. You believe that? I believe in you, he said, his gaze locking with hers, his eyes filled with an intensity that made her heart pound in her chest. And there it was, the truth, laid bare between them, the moment, the potential, the possibility. Not a kiss, not yet, but a pause suspended in breath and heat and something older than both of them, a primal connection that transcended time and space. She stepped closer, closing the gap between them, drawn to him by an invisible force. He didn't move away, his body rigid with anticipation, every muscle tense and waiting. You scare me, she whispered, her voice barely audible, her vulnerability laid bare. Same, he admitted, his voice hoarse, his honesty disarming. But I don't want to run anymore, she said, her voice gaining strength, her resolve hardening. Then don't, Elias said, his eyes pleading with her. Stay, fight with me. Not just for the bloom, not just for the packs, for us, for the future we could build together. Mist looked at him, long and hard, searching his face for any sign of deceit, any hint of reservation. But all she saw was unwavering commitment, a fierce protectiveness, and a love that mirrored her own. Us is dangerous, she whispered, a warning and a temptation all in one. So is being legendary, he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. And finally he reached out and gently touched her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through her veins. She didn't pull away, surrendering to the connection, embracing the risk. Neither did her wolf, reveling in the nearness of its mate, finally finding peace in the storm. The weight of the world seemed to lift, replaced by a fragile yet powerful hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to build a future together. A future where they could both be safe, loved, and free. The first howl echoed from the southern ridge just after dusk. A mournful, chilling sound that seemed to cling to the twilight. Not a warning, not a threat, a signal, the prearranged call to rally, a promise of what was to come. Inside Elias's safe house, tension thickened like fog, clinging to the air, heavy and almost visible. Every single room was occupied warriors from Rosemoon, stationed along hallways, resting near the windows, eating quietly in corners, eyes always scanning, always alert. The quiet was deceptive. Beneath it thrummed a taut, coiled energy. Miss stood near the front door, a pale pink sweater pulled over her frame, a stark contrast to the seriousness of the situation. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands escaping to frame her face. She was calm, too calm, in Elias's opinion. Like the center of a storm that had no business being peaceful, a deceptive stillness that hinted at the raw power contained within. Summer paced behind her, phone in hand, her brow furrowed. That's the third ping from the boundary charm. Someone's testing the perimeter again. Each ping was a jolt, a reminder of the encroaching threat. They're not just testing it, Cade muttered from a corner, his voice low and gravelly, the sound barely audible over Summer's pacing. He was meticulously loading a fresh magazine, each click and snap precise and deliberate. They're mapping it, rogues, opportunists, hungry wolves smelling weakness, circling for a chance to strike. Dax appeared at the front hall, pulling on a jacket. The leather creaked softly as he moved, a sound that spoke of experience and readiness. We're doubling patrols tonight. If anyone so much as sneezes near the ward line, I want a full team on them. He was a seasoned warrior, a veteran of countless skirmishes, and his face was grim. Then it happened. A soft tremor ran through the ground beneath their feet, a subtle vibration that resonated deep in their bones. And then a line of green lanterns along the perimeter fence flared to life, glowing an urgent red, a silent alarm, a fiery declaration that the boundaries had been violated. "They've triggered the wards," Elias said, his voice tight with controlled anger, already moving toward the control panel, his fingers flying across the interface. But only at the outer edge. They didn't cross. Smart bastards. A deliberate provocation, a calculated move. Miss didn't move, her gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the door. They're watching. She knew it in her gut, a primal awareness of unseen eyes. "Yeah," Dax muttered, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of the knife strapped to his thigh. And waiting, patient predators gathering their strength. Just as he spoke, a new sound sliced through the tension. Paws against dirt, dozens of them. A rhythmic cadence, the beat of precision movement, a sound that spoke of disciplined force and unwavering intent. Outside, light swept across the front clearing, then caught them, illuminating a phalanx of warriors in the pale glow. A second unit from the Rosemoon pack arrived. At least 20 women, all in formation, all in human form, but fully alert. Their faces were grim, their eyes sharp and focused. They wore matching deep green cloaks with a single rose embroidered in pink across the back, a symbol of their pack, of their bond. Every one of them carried gear like they'd stepped out of a combat training camp, tactical vests, holstered weapons, and an aura of deadly competence. Summer blinged, her usual confident facade cracking slightly. That's not even half of Second Wave. The sheer numbers were staggering, a testament to the depth of Rosemoon's strength. Mist exhaled, a soft breath that seemed to carry the weight of responsibility. They came anyway, an acknowledgement of the loyalty, the unwavering dedication of her pack. The front door opened, and a sharp-eyed woman stepped through, tall, copper-skinned, with a long braid down her back and a wicked-looking blade strapped to her thigh. Her presence commanded attention. She was a leader, a warrior, a force to be reckoned with. "Luna," she said with a formal bow of her head, her voice clear and strong. "Unit 2 reporting. Respect, duty, and an unspoken promise of protection." Elias and Dax both rose from their seats, surprised and deeply moved. "You brought a second wave?" Elias asked, stunned. He hadn't dared to ask for such a commitment, such a risk. The woman met his gaze calmly, her eyes unwavering. "You've given our Luna shelter. We'll give her a wall. A declaration of allegiance. A promise to stand between Mist and any harm." A low whistle escaped Dax's lips. That's a lot of wolves. He respected strength, and this was strength in abundance. Mist gave him a small smile, a genuine expression of gratitude and pride. That's Rosemoon, a family, a force, a shield. Elias called a quick meeting in the East Wing. The war room was packed now. Cade, Dax, Summer, Mist, and both leaders of the Rosebloom units, plus Elia's betas. Maps were spread across the table, highlighting key locations and potential threats. "We've confirmed 3 rogue packs within 20 miles, Cade said, his eyes scanning a map, his finger tracing routes and marking positions. "One of them might be former enforcers of Braxton. The others are outliers, drawn in by the scent of the bloom, probably." A grim assessment of the situation, a clear understanding of the dangers they faced. "We've sealed the vault room," Elias added. "Crates, supplies, distillation notes, even the infused prototype serums all locked down, protecting their assets, securing their future." "But it's not just the products," Summer said, her voice laced with urgency. "They're after the source, and she's right here. The true prize, the key to everything." Silence fell. The unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. Mist stood, lifting her chin, her eyes blazing with defiance and determination. "Then we hold," she said simply. "We protect the bloom, the formula, the future of our work, but we do it on our terms. A declaration of war, a promise to fight for what was theirs." "Easy to say when you've got a personal army," Dax muttered under his breath, though his smirk showed admiration. He respected a leader who inspired such loyalty. Mist glanced at him, a hint of amusement in her eyes. Would you like to borrow some soldiers? A challenge, a playful offer of assistance. He barked a laugh, the sound echoing in the tense room, a brief moment of levity. Elias shook his head, amused and slightly exasperated. You Rosemoon girls are terrifying. He knew better than to underestimate them. Good, Miss said, a cold edge to her voice. Let's keep it that way. Fear was a weapon, and they would wield it effectively. Later that night, the second rogue attempt came. A test 3 masked wolves breaching the outer charm line, their movement swift and silent. But they didn't make it 10 feet past the barrier before the Rosemoon patrol descended. No howls, no mercy. A clean sweep and a hard escort back beyond the boundary. The rogues were tossed back across the line like broken dolls, a clear warning to others. The message was clear. This was not a Luna to be stolen. This was a pack and a mate worth going to war for. And Rosemoon was ready to fight. The morning broke with a crisp golden hush that settled over the hidden valley. A pre-dawn symphony of birdsong was muted by the heavy mist, a spectral blanket that swallowed sound and softened the edges of reality. Mist curled low over the fields surrounding the safe house, rolling in like a ghost tide. It painted the grass in pale silver, kissed the dew-laden trees, and clung to the weathered stone steps that snaked down into the valley, disappearing into the opaque whiteness below like a path to the underworld. The air itself tasted of damp earth and raw magic, a heady cocktail that sharpened the senses. Mist was already on the massive front lawn with her pack all of Rosemoon now, not just the first and second units. Over 70 women strong, they were a force to behold, a tapestry of power woven from muscle, magic, and unwavering loyalty. Split into meticulously organized squads, they drilled with a disciplined grace, their movements a hypnotic blend of strength and agility, each breath and foot placement precise and deliberate. Punches snapped through the air, echoing in the stillness. Shifts in stance flowed seamlessly, a liquid dance of combat readiness. Tactical formations morphed between human and wolf forms, blurring the lines between flesh and beast. Sparring duels erupted and subsided. Brief flashes of controlled violence played out in human skin, a constant honing of skills. The scent of exertion, a musky blend of sweat and adrenaline, mingled with the raw, untamed aroma of wild magic, a heady perfume that rippled through the air, electric and alive. It was beautiful. A breathtaking display of honed fighting prowess, of bodies pushed to their absolute limits. Terrifying. A stark reminder of the war that was coming, the stakes that were so dangerously high, and very, very intentional. This wasn't just practice, it was a show of force, a declaration of readiness. They were a wall in motion, a living, breathing barrier against the darkness. And they wanted to be seen. The pounding of their feet, the snapping of their punches, the raw power of their magic. It was all meant to be heard, felt, and understood. They were ready. Elias stood on the wide veranda with Dax and Cade, sipping his coffee, the steam swirling around his face in the cold air. His shirt was unbuttoned at the throat, revealing a glimpse of taut muscle and a thin gold chain. His hair was still damp from a shower, the dark strands clinging to his forehead. He hadn't even gotten to finish his eggs, barely tasted them, truth be told, when the distant hum of engines, a low thrum that vibrated in his bones, filled the air. He lifted his gaze toward the ridge, rode, his eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. Years of warfare had honed his senses. He could hear the unspoken threats in the rhythm of the world. Dax raised an eyebrow, his expression a mixture of amusement and concern. They're early. Good, Elias muttered, his voice low and gravelly, a predator's growl simmering beneath the surface. He preferred surprises to be his own. A caravan of sleek black SUVs came winding down the hill, their polished surfaces gleaming through the mist, tires whispering against the gravel. The first vehicle pulled into the clearing with practiced ease, followed by 4 more, forming a silent, imposing phalanx. Doors opened in unison, a synchronized display of efficiency. Out stepped Elias's elite guard, 30 of his South American-trained wolves, the best of the best. Every one of them was a towering figure, tall, scarred, and carved from sheer military discipline. Tattoos, intricate patterns of power and protection, snaked up their necks, disappearing beneath the collars of their black uniforms. Their movements were silent, lethal, honed to a razor's edge. They moved like shadows, each step precise and purposeful, a silent promise of violence. They didn't speak. Silence was their language. Efficiency, their creed. They didn't gawk. They'd seen worse. They took in the lawn, the storm of motion, the controlled fury of the Rosemoon women, with impassive eyes, assessing the strength and potential of the force before them. They quietly fell into formation behind Elias, a silent wall of unwavering loyalty and deadly power. Mist jogged up the hill from the lawn, her movements fluid and effortless, cheeks flushed from exercise, a towel slung over her shoulder. Her blonde, pink hair shimmered faintly in the light, still tousled from the morning's drills. She spotted the SUVs, and her eyes narrowed, a flicker of curiosity and challenge dancing within them. "Let me guess," she said, stepping up beside Elias, her voice laced with dry amusement. "Back up?" "Elite guard," he replied, sipping his coffee like it wasn't a big deal, a subtle hint of a smirk playing on his lips. He knew this display of power would rile her, and he enjoyed the spark it ignited in her eyes. Mist looked over the 30 wolves, her gaze lingering on each one, taking in their size, their scars, the intensity in their eyes. Then she looked down the hill at her pack, at the raw, untamed power that vibrated from them like heat. She smirked. "Is this a pissing contest, Elias? Because I hate to break it to you." She leaned in, her voice low and dry, a husky whisper that only he could hear. "You're outnumbered and outgunned." He chuckled without smiling, his gaze fixated on her. "Quality over quantity, Luna," Cade muttered behind him, rolling his eyes. "Careful. She might make that her next skincare slogan." Dax coughed to cover his laugh, a nervous flutter of sound. He knew better than to openly mock Mist. Mist gave a faux serious nod to Elias's men, her eyes twinkling with mischief. They looked capable, pretty too. Several of Elias's elite remained perfectly stoic, their faces masks of impenetrable discipline. One of them, an older grizzled wolf with a silver streak in his hair and a network of scars etched around his eyes, gave the barest twitch of his lips a subtle flicker of amusement. Approval? Or amusement at Elias's expense? Hard to say. Elias shook his head, a genuine smile tugging at his lips. "They're here to reinforce the perimeter and protect the vault room. And you." Mist tapped a finger on her lips, her eyes scanning the area, a playful glint in their depths. "Well, if they're going to be staying on my lawn, I'll need names, dietary preferences, and their skincare types. I don't want any dry patches distracting them during rogue attacks." Dax groaned, burying his face in his hands. "She's serious." Elias just grinned, enjoying the chaos she created, the way she could disarm even the most serious situation with a perfectly timed joke. The South American wolves began fanning out, moving with a quiet efficiency that spoke volumes about their training. They integrated with the existing patrols seamlessly, with no friction, no jostling. Just measured steps, quiet nods of respect, and a silent understanding of the task at hand. Rosemoon's women watched them, their expressions a mixture of wariness and curiosity. They recognized the power radiating from these newcomers, the honed skills and unwavering discipline. It was a beautiful kind of war dance, respect, power, and posturing all woven into one silent exchange. Each side gauges the other, measuring their strengths and weaknesses, preparing for the battles to come. Miss stepped back toward her pack, throwing one last smirk over her shoulder, her eyes locked on Elias's. "You better keep up, Alpha," she called, her voice laced with playful challenge. "We do 5 drills before breakfast." Elias watched her go, his heart swelling with a mixture of love and exasperation. He knew she was pushing him, testing him, preparing him for the war that was coming. God, he loved her, her strength, her wit, her unwavering loyalty. And the war hadn't even started yet. He knew it would be bloody, brutal, and devastating. But with Mist by his side, he was ready to face anything. The clouds hung low, pregnant with unspoken dread, as if even the heavens held their breath in anticipation. A stillness had fallen across the compound, heavier than any shroud. The drills were done, the weapons meticulously prepped, and the air thrummed with the static of an incoming storm, both literal and figurative. The rose moon pack rows, deep and perfectly aligned, stood poised on the manicured front lawn. Each member was a mirror image of the next, clad in matching black and rose tactical gear, a uniform designed to instill both fear and allegiance. Their eyes, usually bright with life and laughter, now gleamed with a focused anticipation, their jaws tight with suppressed adrenaline. Mist stood at the head of the formation, a beacon of resolute calm. Her long, dark hair was intricately braided, the shimmering pink strands dancing even under the oppressive cloud cover. A single Luna bloom petal, brittle and dried but meticulously enchanted, hung on a delicate leather cord around her neck, a talisman against the coming darkness. Summer stood just behind her, pale but composed, a fragile porcelain doll against a backdrop of hardened warriors. Fear flickered in her cerulean eyes, but her spine was steel, a testament to her forced resilience. Elias's elite wolves, a formidable force renowned throughout the South American packs, had finished integrating with the Rose Moon formations. Their presence added a layer of raw power to the already formidable defense. The perimeter had been fortified with painstaking care, glyphs etched into the very earth pulsed with protective energy, silver ward stakes gleamed coldly under the twilight sky, and a defensive net, woven from moonlight and imbued with pack magic, shimmered invisibly, a barrier only pack members could pass through without triggering 100 alarms. But the rogues weren't waiting for nightfall, for the comforting blanket of darkness to cloak their approach. They came at dusk, when shadows stretched long and distorted, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. The first alarm sounded low and distant and eerie, keening howl that vibrated through the bones of the safe house, a lament echoing across the fields. It was a primal sound, a warning from the very earth itself, and it sent a shiver of dread down Summer's spine. Cade, the pack's fastest shifter, was the first to answer the call, landing in his sleek, obsidian wolf form with a snarl that cut the air like a shard of ice. His eyes burned with a predatory fire, reflecting the imminent danger. "East perimeter!" someone yelled, the voice tight with urgency, shattering the tense silence. Elias, his face grim, turned to Miss. "You stay with Summer. Don't shift, unless you have to." His voice was a low growl, a plea disguised as an order. He knew the risks, the price of shifting. Mist didn't even blink, her expression unreadable. "I'll shift when it matters." Her voice was calm, but held an undercurrent of steely determination. She leaned down and kissed Summer's forehead, a fleeting gesture of love and protection. "Stay inside unless I call for you." And then she was gone, a blur of motion, dashing toward the ridge, her bare feet silent on the dew-kissed grass. The rogue wolves poured in like oil on fire, a ravenous tide of fur and teeth. Over 40 of them, mouths foaming, eyes wild with a desperate hunger, led by Braxton's top enforcers, known for their brutality and unwavering loyalty. They moved with brutal coordination, a disturbing level of discipline that suggested rigorous training, not the usual chaotic rabble of disorganized rogue packs. They wanted something. More than just territory, more than just blood. They were here for her. Their target was clear, their purpose singular. Battle crashed into bloom, a horrifying spectacle of teeth and claws, blood and fury. Mist's pack moved like wind and Thorn's fluid, sharp, deadly. The Rose Moon wolves weren't the biggest, but they were renowned for their agility and tactical brilliance. For every one of their own that fell, 2 rogues dropped, a testament to their skill and training. The South American elite slammed into the fray with a devastating force, forming an outer ring of defense, a bulwark against the encroaching enemy. But it wasn't enough. The sheer number of rogues threatened to overwhelm them. The wards groaned under the relentless assault, the interwoven energies straining and buckling. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the protective barrier fought back, energy flaring as cracks spiderwebbed across the boundary like fractured glass. Then, with a thunderous snap that echoed through the valley, They gave way just enough for the rogues to surge through, a black wave breaking against the defenders. Elias's blood ignited with rage, a primal instinct roaring to the surface. He felt the wards shatter in his very bones, a violation that demanded retribution. "They're through," Dax growled, half-shifted, his claws already dripping red, a grim testament to the ferocity of the fighting. The tide turned in the rogue's favor, the momentum shifting with terrifying speed. Mist ducked a lunging wolf, rolled, and shifted mid-air, a breathtaking sight of light pink fur streaked with ethereal tips of silver and rose, a living tapestry of power and grace. Gasps echoed even in the heat of battle, a moment of stunned silence amidst the chaos. A few rogues froze, their advance faltering, their eyes wide with disbelief. The myth was real. The Luna Child, spoken of in whispers and legends, was here, fighting alongside them. Mist lunged, jaws locking around a wolf's throat, ripping him down like he weighed nothing. Her eyes gleamed crystal green, feral and glowing with Luna rage, a potent force that could shatter mountains and mend broken souls. Elias shifted too, the black wolf inside him surging to the surface. He launched himself into the chaos, a whirlwind of muscle and teeth, searching for her through blood and screams, desperate to keep her safe. Summer appeared on the field moments later, armed with a silver-bladed knife and shifting into her wolf form. Honey gold and sleek, she was a flash of sunlight against the storm clouds. They fought back to back, a united front, darting in and out of the rogue line, a deadly dance of precision and fury. By nightfall, half the rogues had been taken down, their corpses littering the battlefield, a grim testament to the pack's resilience. But Braxton hadn't shown himself yet. The puppet master remained hidden, pulling the strings from the shadows. He was watching, observing, calculating, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The true battle, the one that would decide the fate of the Rosemoon Pack, was yet to come. It was well after midnight when the second wave hit. The moon hung high, a silent witness to the carnage unfolding beneath its silvery gaze. Braxton's forces came in, fast enforcers, trained with silver weapons, sedatives, and binding tools. They weren't interested in a simple skirmish, a fair fight. They wanted to take her. They wanted Mist alive, subdued, a prize to be claimed. The battle raged hotter than the first. The air crackled with magic and the metallic tang of blood. Elias's elite, warriors seasoned by countless battles, were pushed to their limit. The protective wards around the clearing flickered and strained, the ancient symbols etched into the earth glowing weakly. Blood painted the earth, a grim mosaic of the brutal struggle. Then came the moment. The shift in the air, the hush that fell over the battlefield, the understanding that this was it. Braxton walked into the clearing, not in wolf form, human, impeccably dressed in a tailored black cloak that concealed more than it revealed, calm, collected. His beta, a hulking brute of a man, stood silently beside him, a smug twist to his mouth as he surveyed the devastation. Mist shifted back to human form, standing barefoot in the dirt. Blood streaked down her cheek like war paint. Her chest rose and fell with each ragged breath, her stance unwavering, every inch a Luna of legend, a beacon of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. Braxton raised a hand, silencing the last vestiges of the fight. "You could have ruled beside me, Pinky." His voice was smooth, almost conversational, as if they were discussing a business deal rather than the fate of werewolves. "Pinky?" She laughed, the sound sharp and brittle in the night air. "You kidnapped me, tried to sell my blood to the highest bidder. It's not personal," he said, his eyes cold and devoid of emotion. "Power rarely is." Mist stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the blood-soaked earth. The entire battlefield paused. Every warrior, every wolf, every breath held in anticipation. Even the moon seemed to hush, its light softening as if in reverence. She didn't shift, didn't scream, didn't unleash a torrent of magic. She simply closed the distance. She just walked, and then ran. Elias, his wolf instinct screaming for him to protect her, started to go after her, but Summer grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. She needs to do this, Elias. She has to. Her eyes were filled with a knowing that chilled him to the bone. Mist crashed into Braxton like a storm of grace and fury, a whirlwind of righteous anger. He shifted mid-blow, his body contorting into the massive form of his alpha wolf. They collided wolf and woman, fang and fist, claw and skin. She didn't care. Pain was a distraction she couldn't afford. Her hands burned with Luna energy, the raw power of the moon surging through her veins. Her eyes blazed with the full, untamed power of the bloom, a silver fire that reflected the wildness within her. The fight was brutal, a desperate dance of survival. Claws raked her skin, tearing through flesh and muscle. She retaliated, her bare nails hardening into razor-sharp claws of her own, drawing a deep, bloody line across his throat. He gurgled, a choked sound of pain and surprise. But it wasn't enough. He was strong, powerful, a seasoned alpha, but she was fueled by something more. He tried to shift back to human form, to escape, to run. She tackled him, her weight slamming him to the ground, pinned him beneath her, her hands locked around his throat. Looked into his eyes, seeing not the power he craved, but the fear he tried so desperately to conceal. You don't get to touch another Luna again. Each word was a promise, a vow etched in blood and moonlight. And with a howl that split the forest, a primal scream that echoed through the trees and shattered the silence of the night, she ended him. A bloom of silver-pink light burst from her body, an explosion of pure Luna energy that sent a shockwave through the trees, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Every rogue wolf, every enforcer, every warrior still standing on the battlefield stopped, frozen in place by the sheer force of her power, then ran. Fled, scattering into the darkness like shadows fleeing the dawn. The war was over. The reign of Braxton was finished. Elias shifted back to his human form, his heart pounding in his chest. He ran to her, his bare feet pounding on the bloodied earth, and wrapped his arms around her bloodied frame. She was shaking, trembling with exhaustion and the raw emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. But she was alive. Are you... Don't, she whispered, her voice hoarse and barely audible. Not yet, not yet, he nodded, understanding her need. He held her tighter, shielding her from the world, absorbing the tremors that racked her body. The rest of the field cleared, the remaining wolves stepping back, giving them space. Cade, Dax, Summer, the Rosemoon wolves watching with a mixture of awe and respect. The heavy musk of fear and violence was replaced by the clean scent of pine and the subtle fragrance of wildflowers, a promise of healing and renewal. Respect was thick in the air, palpable and undeniable. Not just a Luna. This is the Luna. The warrior who rose to become a symbol of hope, the leader who shattered the chains of oppression and ushered in a new era for her kind. The Luna who had earned her title with blood, sweat, and the unwavering power of her damned spirit. A full year had passed since the last breath of winter faded from Rosemoon, its icy grip loosening to release the land into the embrace of spring and then the burgeoning warmth of summer. The morning sun now poured molten gold across the valley, draping the rolling hills in a luxurious cloak of warmth and light. Dew clung to the wild grasses like a scattering of tiny, captured stars, catching and refracting the sunlight into miniature rainbows. The lavender bushes lining the training yard, freshly pruned and bursting with fragrant life, stirred under a playful breeze, releasing their calming scent into the air. The air itself was a symphony of natural aromas, laced with the grounding scent of crushed herbs carried from the nearby apothecary's garden and the sharp, invigorating whisper of distant pine forests clinging to the mountain slopes home, safety, and strength woven into every breath. Mist strolled down the winding path that overlooked the expansive training lawn, the soft clack of her leather boots muffled by the thick carpet of fresh, emerald green grass. Her pale white hair, still delicately tinged pink from the residual magic woven into her very being, flowed behind her like a silken banner, rippling in the morning breeze. Her stride was graceful and confident, reflecting the quiet power she possessed. In front of her, two packs trained in perfect harmony drills, forms, and stretches executed with synchronized precision, a testament to their rigorous discipline and unwavering loyalty. And in the middle of it all stood Elias, their alpha and her mate, shirtless, his bronze skin glistening with sweat, muscles rippling with each movement. He shouted instructions with that resonant alpha growl, a sound that carried authority and commanded respect, making most wolves jump to attention, all except one. A squeal of pure, unadulterated giggles broke through the focused sounds of training, a burst of infectious joy that melted even the most hardened warriors' hearts. A tiny puffball with curling, pale pink hair and wide, sparkling green eyes, the very image of her parents, latched herself like a determined barnacle onto Elias's leg. Rosie, their daughter, a miracle and a blessing, the tiny heart of their growing pack. Just barely a year old, but already her wolf was blooming, her nascent powers humming beneath her soft skin. Her tiny fists were clutching his sturdy pants, her face flushed with effort as she tried to drag herself up, a miniature Hercules determined to conquer his immovable form. Elias, his face softening with paternal adoration, laughed heartily and hoisted her effortlessly onto his hip, nuzzling his cheek against her soft, downy head. "Papa is training little Moonbeam," he murmured, his voice roughened with affection, kissing the top of her head. "You have to let Papa work, little one," Mist chuckled, a warm, melodic sound that betrayed her amusement as she descended the hill, her arms crossed playfully over her chest, a mock, stern expression gracing her features. "You stole our little miss again? I swear she disappears the moment I blink." "She snuck right out of your arms," Elias said with exaggerated innocence, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Even as Rosie wrapped her arms around his neck, giggling and babbling in half-formed words, a language only her parents truly understood. "Didn't you, pup? You wanted to see Papa, didn't you?" "Papa," Rosie sang, patting his chest with her tiny hand, and then pointing toward the sparring warriors on the lawn, her eyes wide with fascination. Mist reached them and gently tapped Elias's arm. "Come on, hand her over. You're turning her into a little general. She'll be drawing up battle plans before she can even walk properly." Reluctantly, Elias set Rosie down on the grass, supporting her steadily as she found her center. And just like that, the 1-year-old, in a perfect imitation of her father, dropped into a dramatic warrior pose, legs apart, arms lifted high in a gesture of strength and defiance, and gave a squeaky little roar, a sound so adorable that it was almost weaponized. The entire line of trainees paused mid-push-up, their faces breaking into wide grins, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the face of her irresistible charm. One particularly burly warrior thumped his chest and mimicked her roar, earning a delighted giggle from Rosie. "Fear her," Elias announced solemnly, his voice booming with mock seriousness. "The littlest alpha. She will conquer us all with her cuteness." Up on the hill, Summer and Dax strolled down the grassy slope, mugs of steaming coffee in hand, their expressions warm and affectionate. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" Summer grinned, her eyes twinkling with mirth, crouching down to tickle Rosie's bare toes. "You're practicing to take Papa's job, Rosie Bug? Are you already plotting your rise to power?" Dax scooped her up like she weighed nothing, his large hand cradling her securely, and blew a playful raspberry on her cheek, earning a delighted shriek. "Your uncle loves you, you know that? You're going to run this place someday, Rosie. I'm already polishing your throne." Rosie babbled a long, proud string of gibberish, punctuated with emphatic hand gestures, and patted his face with surprising force. Elias threw an arm around Mist's waist, pulling her into his side, his touch possessive and loving, as they watched their little Pac-2 families, two legacies intertwined, forging one shared future. Their future was bright, hopeful, and overflowing with love. Their lives were not simple, not quiet. They lived in a world of magic and shifting loyalties, where threats lurked in the shadows and the bonds of family were tested daily. But they were strong, united. They faced every challenge together, their love and loyalty an unbreakable shield. He turned to her, his gaze unwavering, brushing a strand of white-pink hair from her cheek with a gentle caress, and kissed hers low, certain and full of promise. A promise of forever, of unwavering support, of enduring love. When they pulled apart, Their eyes stayed locked, their souls connected in a silent conversation that transcended words, and the world felt steady again, anchored by the undeniable strength of their bond. This was their home, their family, their love, and it was everything. That's the end of this tale. But in the world of the supernatural, there's always another shadow waiting. Thank you for staying with me through every twist, turn, and heartbeat. If you enjoyed the ride, there's more waiting for you. Just check out the other audiobooks on this channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more magic, monsters, and stories that go bump in the night. Until next time, stay curious and bravened. Never stop listening.